because this is important. Because people hate to talk about it, but it's just factual. Brian Flores got fired because of his sense of entitlement. Period. End of story. The Miami Dolphins had a civil war going on when Brian Flores was their head coach, and it appears that civil war was between he and the general manager, Chris Grier. If you remember when Brian Flores got fired, he sued the ownership group. Is it Jeffrey Ross? Why can't I think of the name of the owner for the Dolphins? Excuse me?
Is it Stephen Ross is the owner?
Stephen Ross. Yeah, Stephen Ross. Michigan grad, big fan of Jim Harbaugh's. Yeah, Stephen Ross was a racist for firing Brian Flores. And I said at the time, I wish we could go back. I said at the time, hey, man, there's a feud between the head football coach, who's black, and the general manager, who's black. They're feuding over the quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, who is Samoan, a person of color. 3 people of color were having an argument about Tua Tagovailoa, and they fired Brian Flores, and the ownership, Stephen Ross, supported his black general manager. Brian Flores played the race card. I got fired because I'm black. All the social justice warriors in the media, of course the Dolphins are racist, and I can't wait for Brian Flores to sue them, and the NFL has such a problem. Well, now Kyle Van Noy, who was a linebacker, just said on a podcast, well, we can watch for ourselves, just said on a podcast that while he was there, he was in the middle of this feud between Chris Grier and Brian Flores. Play the clip.
I believe I was just in the middle of a civil war, they call it, between like the GM and the head coach. And that like going on, the power struggles that you don't see behind closed doors. Yeah. And it was kind of him like, oh, this was your guy? Well, see ya. Another thing down there that happened was some players were talking to the media about Tua and blah, 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 blah. And a lot of people thought it was me.
Yeah.
And then
I heard
people don't know this, but me and Tua are close. Like, I know Tua, and like, for me to like go to like one of the beat writers seems like that's crazy to me. And a lot of like people down there thought I was like feeding these beat writers information, which was like, what? I know some players, that's what they do. Like, I think it's crazy to do that in general, but that's not something I would do. So that was that pissed me off that like some people started that rumor. And then after I got cut, they asked me about like Brian Flores. And then literally like 2 hours after that, someone sent me a news article that came out saying like I was a bad captain, I was a bad teammate, X, Y, and Z. And that was just them trying to like cover themselves of why they cut me, I guess. I don't know.
So I believe in 2021, Michael Lombardi or someone reported that Brian Flores at one point told Tua that he felt the Dolphins should have drafted Mac Jones and not him. Anyway, to me, Kyle Van Noy has just blown up the entire racism narrative around Brian Flores. Do you agree?
Yes. This is vindication for Chris Grier, Stephen Ross, and the Miami Dolphin organization. And to anyone that disagrees, I would ask him this. If you are a Dolphin fan, who would you rather have right now? Brian Flores as your coach, or Tua under the guidance of Mike McDaniel, who has blossomed and runs that offense very, very well? Who would you rather have? Look, you could say about any shortcomings Tua has, but he runs that offense well. Seems to get along with people really, really exceptionally well. A stable leader, and he's extremely productive. And there comes a point, but again, if Brian Flores was that highly thought of in NFL circles, right, why has his name never been brought up again as a future head coaching candidate? That's the question that we have to ask at this point.
I'm going to tell you why, and I'll be the only one, and we got to cut out this entire segment and run it as a separate. Make sure we do that because this is important. Because people hate to talk about it, but it's just factual. Brian Flores got fired because of his sense of entitlement. Period. End of story. This had, and anybody with any knowledge of the NFL and how it actually operates could see what was going on a mile away. And if I don't know Brian Flores, I don't know Chris Grier, I don't know Stephen Ross. I was sitting whenever this went down, I can't remember where I was at the time because I can't even. Someone will have to remind me of the year this all went down. But I said and talked about on air, wherever I was at, either here at Fox Sports or maybe at Outkick, I can't remember. But I was like, hey, man, this is about the quarterback. And the black GM and the black head coach having a disagreement about their Samoan quarterback. This is what goes on in football leagues and on teams. And the ownership came in and said, you know what? I believe in this quarterback and I believe in this general manager, and I can't have a head coach who thinks we should have drafted Mac Jones when we've drafted Tua Tagovailoa. This is just a business decision. But Brian Flores feels entitled, and there is a sense of entitlement that we encourage among black people and encourage among black coaches that gets them cooked, that gets them fired. Brian Flores, remember, Brian Flores snitched on the owner about trying to get Tom Brady. And I said at the time, I was like, if you're an owner and you're paying some guy millions of dollars, he better not snitch on me because I'm trying to get him Tom Brady. That better not happen. That's a disloyal, entitled person that needed to be fired. And he needs to withdraw his lawsuit and apologize and tell everybody he grew, he made a mistake, he misunderstood. And then I think potentially he could potentially be a head coaching candidate again. But we got to quit gassing these guys up and telling every coach, you've been robbed, you've been done wrong, you've been this or that. It's hurt Eric Bieniemy. That's why teams have been afraid to hire Eric Bieniemy, because it's like, you hire him, what if you figure out you need to fire him? And then you're going to have the whole media calling you a racist. And there was just never any proof. I know people. A very good friend of mine, very good, Daryl Carter, sorry for calling your name out, but he's a super successful real estate guy, played basketball at Michigan, black dude, and it's worth a lot of money. Stephen Ross put him in the game. Stephen Ross and him did business deals early in Daryl's career that led Daryl to being one of the more wealthy people that I know. And we were calling Stephen Ross a racist, all off of some BS narrative, all off of speculation and Twitter. We have to stop this. It's killing black men, and it's making people like leery. No good deed goes unpunished. I'm living it out. You know, I talked about the Stephen A. Smith thing with you earlier this week about no good deed goes unpunished, Uncle Jimmy. And I get it. The entitlement that we encourage is killing us, particularly as men. So if you have a further thought, I'm so glad you sent me this story because it's important. Well, but I'll give you a final thought and then
him suing Ross and then turning stool pigeon, he might be more toxic than 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl. So maybe he'll never be a head coaching candidate ever again. The other thing is, this continues a trend. I'm reading a book from Seth Wickersham. It's called Better to Be Feared. It's about the Belichick-Brady Kraft dynasty of the past 20 years. It's a really good book. I'm almost through with it. And Jason, I will say this. Stay away from that Belichick tree. That Belichick coaching tree, when you make them the CEO, there has been a continued pattern of failure. It turns out that the Belichick system is really, in large part, and I respect Bill, it's called Tom Brady. So if you want to hire a coach from that Belichick tree, bring a Tom Brady and you might have a shot. If you don't, the old Kimster warned you about the track record.
Like what you saw? Hit that like button, subscribe, and check out the full episode by clicking the link below.